Thank you so much for your time, Chief. I want to start off by giving you the opportunity to talk about your time so far as our Chief Law Enforcement Officer. What has been the highlight and the accomplishment that you're most proud of this far?
Well, it's been an incredible 4 months, I believe, going into this. Yeah, it's just been nonstop and it's been so rewarding. Also kind of looking at a lot of heavy lifting that we have to do, but amazing partnerships as well. So I'm really looking forward to working with people, really getting into the grassroots level of what the problems are within communities and then working together to solve those.
That's fabulous. And I've seen you out in the community talking to people, so it's great to see that you've made yourself comfortable in these 4 months. I know that there's a lot to look forward to, but we'll jump into the issues. I want to start off by talking about federal issues, APD and immigration. So Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents performed targeted operations on Sundays. They were searching and arresting people who they say were wanted violent offenders. Was your department made aware of these operations ahead of time?
Yeah, so after this happened, I called our contact. We've actually had a meeting beforehand to kind of talk about the way that they operate and what's going to be happening. But I called and talked about it and was told that yes, these were violent offenders within the organization, or within the city. But when you look at what is occurring here, I think about what my mission is, and my mission as a police chief is to keep Austin safe. They have a different mission than I do, but my goal will always be about keeping Austin safe.
Would you have preferred that they let you know ahead of time before these operations took place?
I think even letting us know, and I think in the future they're going to call and let us know, they're not going to give us specifics on where they are or what they're doing, but just that something is occurring, I think will at least give us some heads up to discuss what's occurred and to get information out to council members to speak to their constituents on what's occurring.
Speaking of specifics, do you know how many arrests were made, how many warrants were issued? Did they give you that?
No.
Yeah. So as of now, we know that immigration remains a federal issue, but if the state or the federal administration gives cities the abilities to enforce immigration operations, will APD comply and enforce?
You know, when I think about where we are in our staffing levels, we have 520 officers for a city of 1 million people. That's what we have on patrol right now. My priority is about what keeps Austin safe. Violent offenders, the recidivists, those people that keep reoffending, those type of things. When I'm looking at the resources I have, that is my priority, and it will always be about what is best and what is keeping Austin safe.
Is that to be said that if you were given the ability to go after illegal migrants who are accused of serious crimes, would that take the back seat when it comes to protecting Austinites, or would you take that forward step to enforce?
No, I think when I'm looking at a violent offender is a violent offender. I don't care, what the status is of them. I want violent offenders off the streets of this city. And so that's my priority, is again, making Austin safe for the people who live, work, and come to this city.
So we know that some council members have been outspoken about these ICE operations in Austin. Councilman Zoe Quadri has said he's not for it. Councilmember Vanessa Fuentes says she's not for it. If APD was asked from ICE to help enforce immigration issues, do you think that would bring about issues with the city and the police department?
No, I think again, they have a different role. And those civil orders that they're doing, that is not a criminal order. And the Austin Police Department does not have a role in enforcing that. Again, my priority is about keeping the city of Austin safe.
Understood. My last question on this issue is, after this had happened, how does this make you feel that a federal agency had come in to Austin and they were, what they say was enforcing the law?
I think what needs to be understood is they have been here. I think what has changed is people talking about them being here and them talking about being here. I think this has always been going on. It is just now it's being spoken about.
Understood. So now I'm going to switch gears to public safety. I want to talk to you about an issue that I've followed very closely. I was on Burton Drive on multiple occasions last year. We saw this surge of violence. This was near Burton and Old Torf. And then we saw similar incidences in North Austin on Runberg Lane. These surges of violence were concerning to those people in the area. I wanted to ask you, how is your department monitoring these hotspots, and what kind of preventative policing do we see in these areas?
Yeah, so when you look at hotspots and you're looking at, again, that's using that evidence-based policing on where these locations are occurring. And we know these. I think people that are from Austin that have lived here for a period of time know where these locations are. They've probably always been chronically violent or drug activity. Those type of things have probably occurred in these areas. So you're talking about two neighborhoods who need help. Two neighborhoods who need police to be in those neighborhoods, but they don't need to be over-policed. They need fair and equitable policing, and that's the partnerships that we're going to do. When we look at how we're looking at data and where we need to be, and then isolating that location, and then moving in through police, through a holistic approach of other city agencies, as well as people who live and work there, and truly problem solving issues, that's when we're going to see some huge wins there in these areas.
Absolutely. Chief, there was times when I was on Burton Drive and I was speaking to people who live there, and they told me the police only come out when someone's already been killed. What's your response to that?
Well, you know what, I think that's probably fair. I mean, when you look at the number of officers that we do have in our staffing, that's what I'm doing now, is kind of looking at the staffing from within and how do we get more officers out on patrol. I know the commander there is doing a great job in that area. He's working with, I think, the Archdiocese of Austin and some other areas to bring in some resources to people. Again, you have an area where crime is so underreported, and yet you're having homicides there. So we know this. So trust has to be built about coming forward with crime and then working to alleviate that crime.
Now, just recently, the E6 corridor has been open to drivers, and this is because you wanted to decrease the street party culture. This happened after that violent attack in New Orleans on New Year's, and that hit home for a lot of people in Austin because we had a similar incident in 2014 during South by Southwest when a driver plowed through a crowd of people. What makes you feel that these new barriers put in place will protect pedestrians from attacks like that?
Well, I think it's important to note that this plan was in play way before New Orleans. And this is a plan that the city is exploring as well, as far as making the area more vibrant and making it more friendly for the businesses as well. So to me, it's about getting people up off of the street. The way that it was currently closed did a couple of things. It was not safe. If you have a terrorist coming through that wants to do harm, it is hard to stop a terrorist that's coming into these areas. But again, we're looking at getting people off of the street, off of a crowded street, and onto sidewalks. That is the goal. So I'm looking at different strategies that we're using, and I think we're being successful, and we have a lot of work to do. I've been there every weekend since we've started this. But again, the goal is to kind of look at where the gaps are, what resources do we need, and what structural changes do we need to take place to get this done. So the city is being supportive in that. This is not strictly an APD initiative. It is an all-city initiative. So I feel comfortable and I feel supported in moving forward. I think there's a lot of work to do. Again, looking at those structural changes that we need to do. Again, we cannot keep just temporary fencing up. That's not the answer. But we can start looking at the way people are adapting to crossing in the street, cars coming down the street. We've done a great job of having some DUI enforcement out, some undercover officers out in the bar areas. We have to make sure that underage sales aren't going on, that type of thing. So it is disrupting a culture that was created by closing off this street and allowing underage people to come in and drink and go into these different bars. So you have a few bars that are 18 and over bars. So a lot of people were bringing beer themselves before they would go in. So it was a culture, and I think that kind of breaking that up, we're seeing some changes from that.
That area is so prone to DWIs. We've seen that that's a hotspot area for that kind of activity. Do you ever worry that drivers in that area could be a really serious potential threat, whether knowingly or not, to the pedestrians that are so close to those drivers, despite the barriers?
So we have to be very careful, right? That is absolutely of concern. But the thing is, we're really slowing down the traffic. The lights have been changed to slow the traffic down. And so when we can do that, maybe looking at some additional things we can do to slow the traffic down. But a lot of that is just around that 6th Street area when you're looking at Red River and you're looking at other areas where some DUI enforcement is going to take place. So
I wanted to ask you, I had seen you at a community event, and this was near Jocelyn Elementary, where the Sunrise Homeless Navigation Center was. They were really concerned about safety in the area. I wanted to say, what is the strain for officers to return to these encampments for people who are unhoused? Is that really straining on your department to continue answering these calls and clearing these people out?
Yeah, it is certainly, when you look at calls for service, it is something that we deal with on a daily basis. But it's not the primary job of the police department. And I think we have a homeless strategy office who's doing a fantastic job. Look forward to working with David Gray more. But I'm also concerned when you look at our fatalities that we've had, our traffic fatalities. We have had a lot of unhoused struck by vehicles and killed. So there's a lot of work to be done. When you're looking at parks and you're looking at recreation centers and libraries, all of these places where families want to go, it is of concern. But the city is certainly, and I've talked about this, that people show what they value by what they put their money to. And the city has put money and resources toward the unhoused. And so it's how do we work together, not just the police, it's truly a holistic approach of governance, the police and other entities within the city moving toward addressing the unhoused within the city.
So the homicide rate has been stagnant at 65 per year since 2020. That's obviously a major decline than what we saw in 2021. But do you have a plan to decrease that number? We've somewhat plateaued. What are you looking forward to in the future to help get that down?
Yeah, absolutely. To have 65 3 years in a row, I'm kind of looking, have a researcher looking at that for me. Are we coding them correctly? What exactly are we looking at? But yeah, I think 65 is too much. It's always about how do we drive that number down. And certainly before COVID, I believe the city sat at between 25 and 30 homicides. So to go up that much is, what are the problems there? What am I looking at? So it's truly about looking at data, working with researchers, truly developing a crime strategy plan to address those things. But I do want to say what a fantastic homicide group we have here that investigates this. We have a 95% clearance rate, which is kind of unheard of across the country, where I think across the country it sets an average of 65%. So they're doing a fantastic job of clearing these homicides. But again, 65 is too many.
On that note, last year we saw juvenile crimes spike, some even being charged with homicide. We're still seeing that trend today, violent crime against juveniles. What do you think is the cause of this? How do we address this problem?
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting because it's across the country. So when you think post-COVID, we saw huge rises in juvenile crime, serious juvenile crime, where prior it was really more of the low-level offenses. A lot of this is being driven by adults that they are hanging with, groups and loose affiliated, not gangs, but just loose affiliated groups that these juveniles hang with. But yes, so when you look at homicides, it is about, to me, it's a matter of not being able to de-escalate conflict. From minor offenses, are they escalating violence? And so these are issues, again, working with researchers on how do we tackle this problem.
Do you think that that's an issue here in Austin, these affiliated groups, these gangs with juveniles? Have you seen that?
Well, I think, again, when you talk about gangs, we always want to think about the Crips and the Bloods and those more serious gangs, but I really do think here it's probably those loosely affiliated groups or neighborhood groups. And how do we address that succinctly and successfully? Again, looking at best practices and what the research is telling us and leading us toward plans to truly tackle it.
Chief, last year your department responded to over 34,000 mental health calls. That's the lowest since 2020. This comes after the Police Association President Michael Bullock had called for the department to stop responding to mental health calls. Do you think that your officers should respond to these calls?
I think, unfortunately, it is a world that we have to respond to these calls. When you're dealing with violence, you're dealing with people with weapons, the police have to come. This city's done a fantastic job. I know EMS takes a lot of mental health calls where there's no violence. I think that is probably not done anywhere across the country. So we're already on the cusp of doing some really great work. But how do we even go further with that and truly address the mental health needs? But again, that is not solely a police department's issue. There are things within this city, within this state, that can be done to address mental health. We need beds for people to go to. We need facilities where people can go get help. One of the things we see, from the arresting someone for these events, we're getting called out to not mental health calls, we're getting called out for crimes that are being committed. That's why the police are getting called. And so we're there showing up to, something that may end up being a mental health call and the challenges that come with that. And so the resources available to officers is they're simply taking them to jail, which is not good for the person, it's not good for the jail system, the county, all of these things. So we have to come up with better solutions to address this.
Do your officers feel comfortable? Do they feel confident responding to these calls knowing that they're unpredictable in nature?
I can't say that. I mean, you look at the calls that again, every call that a police officer that comes up on can rise to a level, go from a 0 to 100 in no time at all. We've all seen that. But the resources that we give our officers, and I think they would feel more comfortable responding when everyone else was taking some responsibility for this. When you're looking at where are we putting people, when we don't have space to put someone, that's putting these officers, because they're right back on the street and the officers are being called right back.
My last question on this topic, what was your reaction to Michael Bullock's comment that your department should stop responding to these calls? What was your immediate emotion to that?
I think Michael, he is the president of the APA and he has a job to do. He is supporting the officers and that is his role to do. And I wish we lived in an environment where the police didn't have to respond to these calls, but that's just not the reality. And until something is developed more, we will respond to these calls.
Chief, I opened the door for our viewers to ask questions. I had two CBS Austin viewer questions. One of them is, what size of the police force do you feel you need to make Austin as safe as possible, and what size budget would that take compared to your current budget?
Well, they can't have both of those questions answered, because then I'll have to get on a budget and get my calculator out. But when you're looking at size of department, I mean, we can truly look at, I do think, I think if we were fully staffed now, it would be a little over 1,800. I think the city of Austin could probably use with 2,200 officers, just because the size, it has grown exponentially. We have almost 1 million people here.
You're saying that the department could use 2,200 officers, and you have about 500 right now?
No, we have 500, over 500 on patrol, and the rest are in preferred assignments. So we have about 1,400 officers now, a little over 14. I'll have to get the correct.
So you're talking about maybe half of your ideal size?
I think we probably need about 600 more officers. Yeah.
The second CBS Austin viewer question is, what kind of improvements has APD made to eliminate deaths at Lady Bird Lake? Are cameras out of the question?
No, cameras aren't out of the question at all. I think that's absolutely something we need to look at. One of the things is there's no physical barrier there for someone to when you're talking about people leaving locations that may be intoxicated, that may, and it's dark. So we're looking at, can we look at lighting? Can we look at cameras? All of those things, nothing's off the table to make people safe.
Is there a timeline on how quickly we can see those ideas enforced?
I think first it's about getting a working group together to kind of look at where we are and where are the areas that people are. So if we're able to tackle that and to think and pinpoint where are these locations that people are falling in, again, the locations that are more apt for that, we can start making those physical changes in those locations.
I'm going to switch gears to recruitment and personnel topics. We had seen that when you had come into the force, we were in what people were calling a public safety crisis because of these low recruitment numbers. Can you give me the latest numbers? How are you feeling about your recruitment process so far?
So I can tell you this, and I thought that once we got a contract that we would see some change, and we have. So we are testing every 2 weeks at our recruitment facility. So every 2 weeks, someone can come in, take the physical test, take the written test, and get on a list and start the process to becoming an APD officer. And so currently we have 1,200 people that have done that on a list. So the goal is to have 3 academy classes a year. And so, at that point, if we can keep that rate going, in a few years we can stabilize and get where we need to go. So I think the efforts of the recruitment, the officers there, the men and women of that team have been fantastic, as well as the contract. Having the 30 by 30 initiative, truly looking at signing on to that of bringing 30% of women into each academy class is what that goal is. But we need to start looking at what we want our department to look like, and a department should truly reflect what its citizens look like. And so, when you're looking at recruiting and you're looking at academy classes, more women, more Hispanics, more, female, male blacks, so African Americans. So we have to get to a point where we're going where we need to recruit as an agency. So that's the next goal.
I know bringing more women to the force is something that you really wanted to do as chief. Last year, we had seen that a lawsuit was settled between a former APD officer and the City of Austin APD alleging sexual harassment and retaliation. How do you think these types of things will affect that recruitment process for women who want to feel safe and represented in the department?
Well, I think what that should say is that a woman's going to be taken seriously when they do make those allegations. This is when you're looking at a male-dominated profession, certainly there's challenges, but it is women do a phenomenal job in law enforcement. There is absolute role beyond a role for women here in this job. So to me, that lawsuit said that women will be taken serious and will not be tolerated. So for me, I would love to see more women come to this job, because it truly is a noble profession. It is one where every day, oftentimes people will spend an entire career in a job where they don't feel fulfilled and they don't feel they made a difference. Where this job, every single day, you can feel like you made a difference in someone's lives, and people remember you for the rest of their lives on the good that you've done.
Part of that lawsuit settlement was for officers to receive Safe Advocate sexual assault training. Is that happening?
Yes, it is.
Fabulous. I know that this was a huge issue for you, wanting to bring more women to the force, but can you talk to me about the specifics of recruiting? Is there a specific location that you're trying to bring people in, not just women, but all officers to APD? How are you making Austin an attainable market for officers to work in?
Yeah, I think that's it. The contract is one, giving them a salary that is livable. When you talk about recruitment, your salary for when you're a recruit or a cadet is significantly lower. So we had to raise that up. We raised that by $60,000 to $60,000, up $10,000, and then a substantial raise when they graduate the academy and become a probationary officer. So again, those are huge things that you can do. Morale is something that, when we talk about morale and retention, it's about where they work. People leave bosses. They rarely leave the job itself. So it's about looking at that frontline supervision, looking at our leadership within the department, and what kind of leaders are we being? What kind of managers are we being? And truly offering a line there on how we can improve.
It was not too long ago that we sat down with Chief Henderson for her monthly interview that we had with CBS Austin, and when she declared this is a public safety crisis. How do you feel now? Do you still feel like we're in a crisis with recruitment?
With recruitment, no, I don't feel like we're in a crisis. I feel like we have to do the job. We have to be the ones out recruiting. People are there. People are interested in this line of work, and we have to go find them. And that's what our role is, and that's what we're doing. And we have to give them, offer something to come to. And Austin is a fantastic city. All the benefits of just being in this city, along with a great contract and working environment, the things that we're working for, I want to give them world-class training, world-class experiences, and resources. And so that is going to help recruitment, and it has.
Chief, for more than a decade, APD provided reports of all crimes in its annual crime and traffic report. But in 2021, when we saw more murders than we had in decades, the department stopped publishing those reports. Are we going to see a comeback of this?
Well, I have to look into that and see exactly what that is, but I'm all about transparency, and the public should see what is being reported. And yeah, so I'll absolutely take a look at that.
Chief, I want to ask you, what is your relationship like with the district attorney's office? What's your relationship like with Jose Garza?
Well, I mean, we're both state actors, and we both have goals. And when we're going to work closely together looking at focused deterrence, when we're looking at how we look at our offenders who chronically offend in our most violent crime. I think that's going to be an opportunity for us to work closely together. So I feel very optimistic about the future, for sure.
Has there been times where you've approached him with a conversation about concerns that repeat violent offenders have been let out back on the streets to yet strike again?
We meet monthly, and we have very good conversations, very candid conversations. He knows where I stand on issues. I know where he stands, but we listen to one another. And so that's the goal, is to get to a point where we're both, where we're looking at the safety of Austin, and we're working in tandem to get to the benefit of Austin.
The Police Association has been extremely critical of the district attorney's office. Has that at all hurt your relationship with Jose Garza?
Listen, you have to collaborate with people, whether you agree with things that have happened. There has to be some collaboration. Again, we are both state actors, and we both address crime within the city. And so to keep Austin safe, there has to be a collaboration, and we'll continue with that.
So switching gears, we're going to talk a little bit about Prop A. Since the G files were made public, I understand that your department has received hundreds of requests on disciplinary records of officers. What's the general attitude about that here at the department and for officers? Is this something that they're concerned about?
I think they're concerned about it. I think there's a lot of, you think about someone making an allegation against a police officer, and it could be so far-fetched, and it could be unfounded, and yet it could be out there for public consumption. And so I think that was the fear. But I think there was some misunderstanding about what that was. I mean, it is simply that. It is simply these were allegations, and it was not substantiated. It was either unfounded or not sustained. So these are things that, I think officers, when you look at the totality of it, I think there was some fear there, and really just not understanding what that meant. But it's here, and it's happening, and we are, pushing out as fast as we can these G-file requests when they come in, doing our part.
Do you think that affects your relationship with the community or the officers' relationship with the community, knowing that these records are now public?
No, I mean, if they become public and we have to speak about them, we'll do that. The officers also, once it is known that their G-file has been requested, it has been paid for, and that it's on its way, officers will also see what's being released. So they'll have, the benefit of knowing that before it happens.
How do you feel about the release of these disciplinary records? What's your general attitude towards this?
Where I'm from, that would never be, it was public to begin with. So I don't know why it would never be public. So I really don't have an opinion on it.
Oh, that's interesting. In recent years, the City of Austin, the Austin Police Department, and even our previous chiefs have faced lawsuits alleging excessive force and even wrongful death at the hands of APD officers. How do you plan to rebuild trust in the community but still ensure accountability for your officers?
Yeah, accountability is a big deal, right? And so through their training, through getting, just like you said before, reports and different statistics that we can put out. That's extremely important. But the officers, accountability is a big deal. We have a disciplinary process that we deal with, and you set standards by your discipline. And so I stand by the things that I've done, and they speak for themselves. But we have a role here, and to be a police officer is a big deal. And I talk about it being a noble calling. It is a very noble calling, and officers often want to know, why does it matter what an officer in New York or somewhere else did? Well, it matters because that's how important this job is. And so when things are done and that distrust occurs, we have a lot of work to do to rebuild. And so I think that's it, is truly getting the trust of the community built back up and getting some equity, because that's what happens. When you build trust with the community and they see you for the hard work that you're doing and the dedication, when something happens, and something will happen, you're able to call on those relationships because they know the work that you're doing. And that's where we need to get.
Some of these lawsuits were calling for better de-escalation tactics from the department. Has anything changed in recent years to the way APD responds to calls and how they de-escalate situations that are very high tense?
Yeah, so ICAT is the integrated communications model, which is a de-escalation. It was created by PERF. And that is a model that the department uses. We still have some people to get through for training. But again, we're going to push that training. That's going to be a priority for us. It truly talks about, if you could think about tactically sound officer would be a SWAT officer, right? And so that is what ICAT is. It's what SWAT does. It's slowing down a situation, de-escalating, talking, taking your time, trying to formulate a plan, all of those things. So I think that is, ICAT is a fantastic model, and that's, APD, that's the way we're going.
Chief Davis, just recently you had to suspend 3 officers. You made that public for different various reasons. How do you learn from each of these situations, from every time a situation like this arises?
Yeah, so it's about what does this say to the public? When you're looking at discipline, what does what I do, which is a big deal, and people watch that and it means something, and the officers are watching that, it means something. So the way we interact with the public, the way we interact with the community, it matters. And so there has to be consequences for bad behavior, poor behavior, and someone that should probably not be a police officer.
Chief Davis, my last question for you. People would say with each new chief, there's a new era of policing in Austin. We are in the Lisa Davis era of policing in Austin. My first question for you is, how do you plan to rebuild trust in the community after things that have happened in the past that may not have been your fault or your doing, or you have no part in at all? But how do you plan to create a relationship with Austinites?
Well, I think that's creating a relationship with the Austin citizens and also internally here with the officers. We have fantastic officers within this organization, but there is a lot of trauma here, from 2020. And so we have to move forward. And so building trust within internal and external. And so externally, it's about getting to the community meetings, listening to people, being collaborative, being at the table with people I may not agree with, but still listening and having a voice, letting them have a voice that can be heard. Being true to my word and doing what I say I'm going to do. That's how you start building trust, and that's how officers can start building trust. When we can start looking at the way we're responding to calls and getting there sooner, and the service that we're giving, being responsive to people, that will start building that trust. Internally, it's about them knowing that I support them in the role of what they do and support training, best training in the country. I talked about that, having the best resources for them, the best equipment, the best training, all of that stuff matters to them internally. And so when I do that for them, that's the goal, is to build that trust with them, and then that makes them better officers when they're going out and policing the community.
What do you want your legacy to be, your staple?
I think it's just about how we're bringing evidence-based policing to Austin, how we're looking at data. Policing is a science, and so it's part science and it's part that human need of being in a place and being in a space and working together. So that's what I want to do, is where we're really truly building community relationships and we're truly solving problems using data, using crime science principles, and using researchers, bringing academics in and looking at all of that, but also having the community and the businesses here work toward those solutions together.
Chief Davis, is there anything else that you want to add that maybe I haven't yet asked you, but you think is important to note?
I just think that the recruiting, that's an effort that is underway. And again, I would ask people that are watching this show to come check us out. And to, again, we're testing every 2 weeks at the recruiting on Saturdays. to come check us out and be part of the change, be part of the passion of policing. I mean, it is a fantastic job. Again, a very noble profession with a great contract and some great people here. So that's what I would ask.
Is APD currently going to our colleges, to our high schools? Is that an initiative that we've seen from the department?
So our recruiting, now that the contract is passed, we're able to go out of state. It's amazing, the algorithms that'll tell you who's Googling Austin. So we go there, but we also, Texas is a huge state, and to get some homegrown talent in here and people that have lived in Austin or surrounding Austin to be part of this change, that's exactly where we are. So recruiting's doing a fantastic job of getting people in the door, and now it's just about looking at where we go from here and getting those numbers up.
For some people who have seen the rocky relationship that APD has had with the city or the recent events, some turmoil, is there a hesitation for them to come to Austin, or do you see that the general morale of people wanting to work in Austin?
Listen, I think you have a city administration that supports the police. We have a really good contract, and I think things are taking a turn. It goes back to that accountability piece. And again, I've said this, it's not mutually exclusive to have a strong community support, a strong support of the police, and then hold police accountable. Those things are the same thing. We all want the same thing, and that will create a stronger Austin and a much stronger police department as well.